I'm Kirk Driscoll. I'm your host, and this is Cattywampus podcast. So that's a little different. So we keep changing up our intros every week. I just want to let you know. So we could do. Would you like to try one? This is my good friend Ben here, but would you like to try an intro to Cattywampus?
Oh my goodness. Like right here. Like,
yeah. Just give it. Let's see how it.
Like, hey, I'm Ben Cathey, and we just want to welcome you to the Cattywampus podcast.
See,
you know,
it's pretty good.
All right.
Yeah. So we just do it different every week.
All right.
But it's pretty cool. Hey, they give me a hard time about it. It's really because I don't know if we've come up with a great way to intro, but I kind of like doing them just a little awkward every time.
Why not make it up?
It was a little weird. I had a buddy introduce himself as me doing one week. Yeah. That was a little awkward, I will say.
Well, we can try that.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not Kirk Driscoll. Welcome to Cattywampus podcast.
I'm going to start coughing now. But anyway, so Ben, thank you for being here, man. Yeah. Really, it's been pretty fun getting to know you. And who says you can't have fun and laugh with a pastor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
And I know that we were talking a little bit before. So Nathan Casberry actually was on the show back a couple months ago.
Oh, fun.
I've known Nathan a good long while. Great guy. So really excited to see you join their team and plant another church. So you're planting a church here in Milton.
We are.
So is it Local Church Milton or Milton Local?
It's Local Church Milton.
Local Church Milton.
Yeah, and then Nathan's Local Church Canton.
Yeah.
So
how do y'all's church? How do they all work to get? They're all independent.
Yeah.
But what's the model behind? Like what?
Yeah. It's not a campus, and it's not just grow a church bigger. It's start a new church. And so what they do is they try to find the right pastor and match him to the right area, and then see what God will do.
Yeah.
So,
And like one thing I think I understood, like what's y'all's desire size of the congregation?
Yeah, we don't have like a size necessarily. I mean, if God grows it, that's awesome.
Yep.
But just the nature that we want to be local might put a little bit of lid on it. But the idea behind local is that the church would be very relational, that people would know each other inside church, but also outside of church, and that they'd just be a family. So local. We want local people to come, and we want to invest and love on our local community.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here. And you came from just kind of...
I'm a Atlanta native, born at Piedmont Hospital, but I came from Birmingham, Alabama. We've been over there a couple of years. Yeah. Birmingham's a great city. Good to be back home, you know.
Yeah.
If you're from Atlanta, you'll always be a stranger in your own hometown.
If you're from Atlanta, you'll always be a stranger from your hometown?
In your own hometown. You drive around Atlanta, nobody knows you.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Drive around Milton, people can know
Milton
you.
You do.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe that's one of the things we're trying to do is sort of bring that kind of relational atmosphere back to church.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, y'all have definitely done, from some folks that I've seen get involved with you and just seeing y'all out at different places, it's really interesting to see how you're integrating in. And I know y'all just launched last couple weeks ago. It just was.
Yeah, we launched like last Sunday. So here I am. I mean, the glaze is just about out of my eyes today.
Yeah. They haven't fired you yet, so you're doing good. That's awesome.
I have people say, well, I don't think we can make it this Sunday. And I said, well, I hope we last more than 1 week.
That's like see it the next one. Huh?
Yeah, we did. We had a good crowd, and we feel like
Where are y'all meeting right now?
We're meeting at Northwestern Middle School. It's right across from Milton High School.
Perfect.
And we had some kids in kids ministry and some babies in the nursery, and we had over 100 adults in worship, and we felt like we got a little something to build on here.
What time? One service. What time service on Sunday?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Northwestern Elementary.
Yep.
In Milton.
And just localchurchmilton.com.
Perfect.
All that information.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for being here, and hopefully, folks can see that you're real and transparent and want to be, and that's where, no, we'll stop recording. Don't worry if you don't get so. But it's been great to have some pastors that we have had on. They're just authentic and they're open, and that's what I know you to be. So we'll jump in there, man. And it's like, what's that moment in your life where everything was just, where you came to realize things were just jacked up and awkward and cattywampus?
Yeah. Well, you know, In a little way, I had one this morning. You ever lost a trailer hitch?
Lost a trailer while you're driving?
No, like you just can't find it. So you can pull your trailer, and then you got to go to the hardware store, and you get a ball, and then you get home.
Yes. Do you have a teenage son that drives? Because if you do, I can tell you where it's at. It's like
But, anyway, I finally got the bolt off and got the new ball back on, and we're ready to go with my little bitty trailer. Because I'm going to need it, because I'm picking up more sound equipment for Sunday.
But today.
No, that's the little stuff. That's the kind of everyday stuff. But if I think back on my life and sort of cattywampus, so many times, but I say the biggest season of my life was in my early 20s. My dad had, just become more and more addicted to alcohol. And now I know, in his own words, every drug under the sun, and I don't remember exactly how old I was, maybe 22. My mom had enough. I didn't blame her. I helped her move out, and then my dad went AWOL. So he was
AWOL.
Like he was, I thought he was alive somewhere.
Yeah.
But there was no contact. So
for how long?
9 years. And that was one of the weirdest, hardest feelings in the world. My dad allowed drugs and alcohol to determine his actions and behavior. I've told folks I never doubted my dad loved me. He just didn't know how to do it very well, and he was abusive toward my mom. And I protected her. If you've ever knocked your dad out and he's been laying on the floor with his eyes poking up, and you think you killed him, you've been in a spot, right?
Yeah. How old were you the last time you had to do that?
Oh gosh, 20.
How did that make you feel? Like,
it was a terrible, crazy feeling. You ever heard of yard fighting rednecks?
Yard fighting redneck.
Yeah,
I've been around a few of them.
Heard that term?
Yeah.
Well, he and my so since he was an alcoholic, he had left a bunch of beer cans in my brother's car, and my brother drove it to school. And then when my brother got back home, he's like, "Dad, you can't do that. If they see those in my car, even in the parking lot, I'm going to get expelled." And so they were literally fist fighting in the front yard. And I'm like, I'm going to break this up. So, of course, when I try to break it up, my dad gets angry at me. So I end up fist fighting with my dad in the front yard. So I don't know what our neighbors said that day, but we that was the day he was laying there on the driveway, and he had hit his head on the concrete when he fell back, and just and that was a crazy moment. But that was right before he just went AWOL. I think in some ways, because I was my mom's protector, he might have blamed me a little bit for her leaving him, and I wouldn't be the only person, right? But he's like, so he, I don't know where he lived, but that was a hard season. And there was a lot of anger, I mean, your dad did these things, didn't keep his promises, and then he just leaves. And so I just remember in seminary, so I was training to be a pastor. I felt God called me into, being a pastor.
Not a boxer.
Not a boxer.
Perfect. All right.
I thought he might call me to be a football player, but that
didn't happen.
That ended when I went to watch Auburn practice and gave that up. But my dad, I was called to be a pastor. I was supposed to love people. I was supposed to help people find Jesus. And at the same time, I had this anger in me. And I told people, there were times I'd just be driving down the road and just this anger would well up. And, I could sometimes just see my fist crashing against my dad's head. There's just just this vengeance. And I was like, God, I got to do something about this. And I remember one day trying to look up some stuff on forgiveness in the library. There was no Google, right? Because I'm not getting any younger, right? But there's
so
no
this
Google.
was before Google, before you had to go to the library.
Yeah. I go to the library. I'm trying to look up stuff on forgiveness, and I find this magazine by the Jesus People. There's a movement. If anybody knows or heard a band called the Resurrection Band, I mean, this is old school Christian
I don't know the
rock and
Resurrection
roll.
Band, but
They put out a magazine for a little while. And in this magazine, there was one article. And Wendy Kaiser was one of the singers in that band. She writes this one-page article about how she had two uncles who sexually abused her when she was a child. They both had passed away. Neither one of them ever admitted what they had done to her. And she carried this anger and angst with her. And she said, God's commandment to forgive extends even into death. Like that person's wronged you and they're dead. You still got to forgive them, because ultimately that's about you and peace in your heart and your relationship with other people. And that article just turned a light on for me. And I realized that I didn't have to find my dad. My dad didn't have to find me. We didn't have to have this meaningful conversation, you know. I just needed to forgive him. And, I mean, that didn't happen. I didn't walk out of the library and, like, you know, it took, I don't know, months. And finally I felt like I was able to let go and just live in peace. You know, I was a young man. I had 3 children, bought my first house, trying to figure out how to make life happen with a new wife and cars. And, you know, my dad wasn't around, but he was around, you know. And so I finally just made peace with that and started living life and figuring stuff out and not thinking, stupid dad, you know. And I'm so glad that I had that journey of forgiveness, because like what I know now is, like, if you don't forgive, it starts affecting not only you, but everybody else around you. So you sort of take that unforgiveness and you spread it to the other people around you, you know? 9 years later, the phone rings, and guess who's on the other line?
Your dad.
My dad. And I've told people 9 years later, you recognize your dad's voice, right?
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And I was like, well, hey, you know.
Yeah.
And the first thing he says is, I'm sorry. And, you know, since I had gone through that sort of period of forgiveness, like really trusting God with that, you know, I was able to say, okay. And
mean it.
Yeah. And mean it. And, you know, we didn't have to have a big conversation. I knew what he meant. He knew what he meant, you know. And then he says, this is pretty profound. He says, can I meet my grandchildren? And I said, well, it seems like the right thing to do, you know. Maybe you can come over to the house sometime. And then he says, do you want me to cut my ponytail? And I said, no, not unless the drummer in the band needs to cut their ponytail, you know. Yeah. And we worked it out. I don't know, it was a couple of days later, maybe over the weekend. He came over, and I still have that picture of him there in the backyard sitting on the hill with his 3 grandchildren. And we, you know, I won't say that beyond that, our relationship was ever like perfect, you know. But I will say that even if your dad's not perfect, it's better to have him in your life than not.
So even if he's not perfect, it's better to have him in your life than not.
Yep. I can tell you that. That's a fact of my own life. So.
And what do you mean by, what is that? Is, I mean, because everybody could have different perspectives. Like, oh, you don't know my dad. If you knew my dad, you wouldn't say that. So how emotionally, what is behind that?
Yeah. So, I think some people, they just, if a parent or a sibling doesn't measure up to their expectations for what they should be, I think I've just heard of too many people in the world just absolutely pushing them away, or ghosting them, or wanting nothing to do with them. And don't get me wrong, I had to have some boundaries with my dad. You know, I don't know. So my dad's passed away, so I feel like I can talk a little more freely about him now than I would have. But you know, I'm guessing he not only did every drug under the sun, he probably helped sell some and delivered some, and I think he sort of lived in that world. So there are definite places there where I was like, yeah, the kids are never spend the night at your house, you know, that kind of thing. But there was still value in his presence, right? And there's value in the ways that he was able to invest in. And like I say, in so many ways, I'm fortunate because I never doubted my dad loved me. And I know some people have to walk through life and they doubt that one of their parents loves them, but that's a different journey, you know? But he just, you know, he frankly acted like an addict, you know? Yeah. He would be late. He would say he was going to be somewhere and wouldn't be there. Sometimes he would walk into a social situation and he'd be like, "Where's Dad?" He'd just be gone, you know? He would buy the weirdest Christmas gifts, you know? And
what was the bet? You remember what? You remember one?
Man, there's several, but one was
like where you roping it up, like, what the hell is this?
He wouldn't make plans, right? So one day I get home on Christmas Day, and there's like a 20-pound bag of beef jerky in my mailbox. Like, it's so big, it's sticking out of my mailbox. And I'm like, that had to be my dad. So I call my dad, and he's like, "Yeah, I tried to come by and see you. That was the best thing they had at QT." Just stuff like that. And just
really planning ahead really well.
Yeah, not a whole lot of planning, but hey, it's Christmas Day. I'm going over. I should probably get a gift, you know. Yeah. And I think my brother and sister always laughed about that. In fact, one time he gave us 3 Santa Clauses that were like little statues. They're actually chimeneas, you know, you put a little fire in.
Yeah.
It was so obvious he picked them up at Kroger on the way over, you know, and they're probably on deep discount because it was Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And he was a little scary looking. Like there was a reason he was on discount, you know, hadn't been sold yet. And for years we would trade those and put them in odd spots, you know. I put one on the roof of my brother's office and left one on the sign at the front of his neighborhood. I left it up there so it'd greet him, you know, going to work that morning.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So it's like even when he's not everything you want him to be, you still have the good memories that you can you can take.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad, you know, when he called and said, "I'm sorry," I just said, "Oh, okay, let's work on it," instead of, you know, "You're an idiot, stay away. I've done fine without you for 9 years. I'll do fine without you the rest of my life." You know,
how did it make you feel when he called and you realized it was your dad? Like the child in you, not the adult man, but the child in you. Like, what did that feel like?
I think I was happy. I really do. You know, the mean part of me was, you know, well, he's happy. Like, it's so funny, you know, you're full grown adult, been successful in life, and you still want your parents to know what you're doing, you know, or to at least approve, right?
Right.
You still want your parents to say, "Well, that's good job."
Yeah, there's a lot of times I don't call my dad if I'm about to do something because I know he's not going to agree with it. But then when I call him, want to complain, like, "I can't believe this didn't work out." Yeah. It's like, well, you know, he doesn't. He's not going to listen to me complain. Then he'll love me through it, but he's not going.
Yeah,
he's not going to just support my my poor decisions.
Yeah. See, my dad can never, like, my decisions are so much better than his.
Yeah,
honestly. But I guess the best thing about that relationship, as it sort of came back, was he just showed up in places where you would expect a dad to show up.
Yeah.
So, you know, like my kids' graduation from high school. Every time I've been in a new church, first Sunday, he's been there. And that means a lot. If you push somebody out of your life, they're not there.
They're not there.
You know,
just the physical presence there.
Yeah.
What do you think that you learned about yourself or how to navigate through? Like you talked through I went through this process of forgiveness, but you didn't just read the article and it happened, right? Yeah. So there was a process. Like what does that look like? Of a short version of like what is that? It's like, oh, I forgave him. Okay, well.
I think one of the things, it's a young person trying to live their life as best they can for Christ, trying to be morally pure in a lot of ways. I think judgment can sometimes seep into that a little bit. And I think one of the things I learned through that is just let go of that. Like let go of wanting other people to think, to be what you think they should be. Let them be themselves. Encourage them on their journey. Know that it's your love and encouragement that's going to help them take that next healthy step, and it's not your pronouncement of what they should be.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's good. That's good advice. So, that's easier to do with a loved one than an elder of your church, huh?
It's way easier. It's way easier.
No. So, what are those double D's, those daily disciplines?
Yeah,
that you have to kind of keep that mind frame.
Yeah. Just to stay in that way. Man, it's easy to get out of your disciplines, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
it's so easy. I tell you, the biggest thing for me, and this is a little bit cliched, is when I'll spend time with Scripture. My day goes better, my week goes better. And, man, when I start hitting that every day, I just feel like things get in line. And I don't mean like a deep study. And I don't mean I got to understand every element of it. But I mean, pick up Scripture, like take one of those sections. Like, how in the Bible there's a section like the woman at the well. It'll be 20 verses, whatever. Like read that section and say, okay, God, what do you tell me? What's the truth in this? And then what do I need to do about it? And, it's pretty simple. Anybody can do it. That's been one of the biggest, I think, disciplines in my life. It's spending that time, and I know it when I don't. If I get busy, I let 3 or 4 days or 3 or 4 weeks go without resting in that. It'll get me. But I also want to say our relationship with God and other people, like it doesn't exist in a closet. So I can go to that private sort of prayer moment, and I think that's healthy. But I think I also just try to love on people and spend time with people and not isolate myself with people, even when they're not perfect or they're not maybe not that person I would choose to see today, but just try to be present.
Yeah, thanks for taking my invitation.
Yeah, that's right.
He's practicing it right here, right now. So,
but yeah. So, I mean, beyond that, I think there are all kinds of ways to stay healthy that are important, and we shouldn't ignore them. Right. Like, I mean, you got to eat well, you got to exercise, you got to, like, so many times I think Americans cope sometimes with things that are unhealthy because they're not coping in healthy ways. And sometimes I think,
say that one more time.
Well, they cope in unhealthy ways because they're not coping in healthy ways. So they cope with whatever, alcohol, pornography, gambling, overspending, because they're not out here investing in relationships. They're not serving and loving other people. They're not trying to take care of their body in some way. Yeah. They're not even like doing a hobby that they like, Yeah. So they end up coping in a negative way. And I think that's why a lot of people also, I don't want to give some blanket thing here. There's an exception to everything.
Well, go ahead.
I think that's why a lot of people end up either on, drugs or in a long-term psychological, therapeutic kind of situation, because they don't cope in healthy ways. Because really, if you look at the drugs and the psychologist, they're just helping you cope. And if you cope in healthy ways, maybe you'll never get where you need that kind of help. Yeah. And I'm not saying people don't need that kind of help.
Oh, without
people
a doubt.
Do.
No, I get you there. But, that's not, I didn't take it that way at all.
Yeah. So
no, it's just, of being of service and being available and being concerned for someone else rather than my own crap is going to keep me healthier.
Yeah.
It's going to keep me moving. And it's there. It's pretty awesome.
I went to see a counselor one time, and I was like, hey, help me out. And we had a whole session, the sofa session, right? And the end of the session,
we can turn the cameras around if we need to do it.
Yeah, you want me to lay down right there?
Yeah.
At the end of the session, he's like, hey, I don't think you need to come back. He goes, those ways you told me that you're coping with this, just keep doing those. All I'd do is check in with you and see if you're doing them. So if you stop doing them, come back and see me. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So I've just tried to do it.
Yeah.
And,
well, and that's the thing is practicing the things that have worked for you, and then being held accountable to, continue to do them. So if someone knowing, and half of people do this here or there, but when we say this, like this, that camera, you get to, that camera, forget that I'm here. Okay. Because what I really want you to do is speak to that child that just knocked his dad out because he was beating his mother.
All right. Yep.
Man, you're living an epic life right now, having huge impact and you're living in freedom, in forgiveness and joy and serenity. Like, speak to that kid that's maybe in an adult body, like how epic life is now, that how can they get, what would you suggest to them?
Yeah. I would, God, that's a tough one. But I would say if you are living in that situation where there is somebody who's abusive in your life, number one, if that is causing you harm, get out of that situation. But if there's a place there where you can work on it, I would say, like, don't try to box that person in a corner. Don't point a finger at them. Firmly express what is good and right and just. Protect yourself, and stand up for what's right, but also don't become bitter because of that person. Don't hate other people because of that person. Don't hate everybody who dresses, acts, talks like that person because of that person. And then realize at the end of the day that person is a person, and that what they're going through, they are struggling. And sometimes people struggle so much that frankly, they need to be in jail, but they need help regardless. And try to find ways to be helpful and stand up for that. At the same time, know that your own life can be an example to the people around you and can even be an example to that person. So don't let that person's dysfunction, especially if it's a parent, give you an excuse, frankly, to act just like them. And sometimes that happens to people. You have a dad or a parent who's like doing all this stuff. You're like, well, I can do that too, and I'm even going to do it better. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I think one of the promises that has always meant a lot to me from Scripture is where Paul says that all things work for good. But he has a phrase there, for those who love the Lord. And so, like, God can take whatever that's terrible and he can work for good if we'll choose to love him. So no matter what the situation is, even if you're running from some kind of harm, choose to love God, and you'll begin not only see what God can bring out of it, but how God can use you to help other people who might be in a similar situation. So,
man, thank you for that word.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for just being transparent and real.
Yeah, well,
congratulations on the new church.
Yeah, thank you.
Can't wait to see what it's doing.
Thank you.
We're going to put in the description of the video, we'll put a bunch of contact information and whatnot, so they can get there. And
obviously we're a church. We'd love for people to come. Right?
Yeah, so hopefully, maybe a couple of them may watch this. If they don't show up, they'll be like, "Oh man, we don't know if we want to be around this cat anymore." Man, thank you for being real, being honest, and just being a part of my life and supporting Vision Warriors and just our community at large, man.
Absolutely.
We're grateful for you. So
absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks for watching this week. Check back next week for another great episode of Cattywampus.